welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. As many of you joining the program today try to find ways that you want to achieve your goals and have a better life than the one you believe you're leading, sometimes you find destroyed when it comes to picking up that self-help book from the shelf of thousands of books that promise you that particular bliss you're searching for. A lot of times you find yourself also trying all the exercises that are suggested into the book, but finding that things just aren't moving ahead the way you would hope. Well, joining us here on the program today is someone who's going to be sharing some simple methods. In fact, a 5-step method for resolving the root cause experiences behind things such as physical and emotional problems, also exploring unhealthy beliefs that can show how you can heal them, and also how you can combine things such as emotional freedom technique in combination with the mind detox method to explore more common major blind spots in your belief system and how to overcome them. He's someone who's had thousands of hours of clinical practice. He's also the author and coach and creator of Calmology. His books include Mind Calm, Body Calm, Calm Cure, and Thunk. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest and author of the newest book, Mind Detox. Our guest joining us today, Sandy Newbigging. Sandy, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you so much for having me, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be with you and your listeners.
It seems to me that you actually had your own obstacles that you overcame that got you to this point here. Tell us what was going on for you.
Well, to be honest, I had what probably people would say would be a normal life, but I suffered from things like anxiety, insomnia. I secretly had an eating disorder. I struggled with money problems and relationship problems and heartbreak, and overall I just got to a point in my life where everyone was telling me I was successful, but I didn't feel successful. I had everything in the external world that everyone told me I should have, but I felt there was something missing. So that really was the catalyst to me wanting to pursue, the self-help, spirituality side of ththings, and I accidentally created this Mind Detox method a few years ago, and then went on to become a meditation teacher and even a monk as well. So, hopefully we'll have an interesting conversation today.
Now, you suggested in the beginning of your book, and I think it's actually more than a suggestion as you share a lot of real-life success stories, is that you talk about the idea that a good peace of mind is our birthright. Now, what exactly is good peace of mind? What is that?
Well, peace of mind is whereby you experience what I call mind mastery. You see, most people aren't able to stop thinking whenever they want. They start thinking in their, early teenage years maybe, and they've not been able to put the mind down ever since. So peace of mind is kind of a two-pronged approach. Number one, it's learning how to be able to put the mind down, return to the inner presence of peace and stillness and calm. So that's one element of peace of mind. But there's also the additional element of making sure you have peace with your mind. In other words, learning how to calmly coexist with the thoughts that are inevitably going to happen during your day. Some of these thoughts can be positive, some of these thoughts are going to be negative. Now, the average person, as far as Stanford University is concerned, is having upwards of 100,000 thoughts every single day. Now,
wow.
It's a lot of thoughts. Now, if we were to even say on average that 50% were positive, 50% were not so positive and more in the negative category, then that's a mammoth task to try to turn your whole thinking around to only have positive thoughts. And to be honest, the mind is here to help us survive and support us and make sure that we're going to be safe. And so it is going to produce some what we'd call negative thoughts sometimes. So we need to learn how to have peace with our mind as well. And that is a core element of the Mind Detox and also the meditation techniques that I share.
Now, it's interesting because when you take a look at this perspective that we're talking about right here is that people might think for a brief moment, I feel enslaved by my mind. Have you ever felt that way yourself?
Absolutely. There's been times when I couldn't sleep because my mind was working overtime. And I felt that I was being used by my mind like a puppet instead of me using my mind like a tool. And so that's really what I'm inviting people to learn to do overall with Calmology, is to learn how to pick the mind up, use it, and then put it back down. And that's an amazing skill to have that I think everybody should have, And it can really transform our lives if we're able to use our mind instead of being used by our mind.
Now, as you were beginning this process for yourself, is that the idea when you were trying to move forward, you would say, well, this is something I would like to have. How did you begin to see, or what was emerging for you in your thinking process where you realized, I didn't realize, I'm self-sabotaging. I didn't know I was doing this, but all of a sudden you discover you were. What was the process behind all that led you to that discovery?
Honestly, I just found myself in a fight with life. It didn't matter how hard I worked, how much I achieved. I just never felt fulfilled or successful. I always felt like my happiness was in the future and peace wasn't possible right now. And it was around about that time that I came across a quote by Buddha, actually, and it said, "No mind, no problem." It was a very short quote, but I loved it. No mind, no problem. And it really got me to thinking, to be honest, saying, are a lot of my issues a result of what's happening in my life, or is it my mind that's got a problem with everything? And I started to observe all the judgments that were happening inside my mind, and I now these days call it the judgment game, where my mind always wants to put everything into a box of either good or bad, right or wrong, better or worse, positive or negative. Now, if we end up on the good, right, better, and positive side of things, we've got a nice moment. But more often than not, we end up in the bad, wrong, worse, or negative. Or at least I did, anyway. And I would start to feel all that negative thinking, and I could really see the correlation between all my thoughts and the negative emotions and the stress that my body was enduring. The fact that I couldn't sleep at night, the fact that I had chronic anxiety, the fact that I could feel lonely in a room full of people really showed me that it wasn't necessarily my external world that was the cause of my inner problems. I actually had to do something on the inside to then improve my relationship with my world, my relationship with my mind and my emotions and my body and other people that I interact with. So I don't know if that answers your question, Daniel, but I've done my best. It was more recognizing that I had to change something on my side of the fence instead of keep blaming other people or life.
It seems easier when we get into the habit. And I think a habit is also one of them cornerstones that begin to create what we call beliefs. But the thing is the habit of the idea that somehow we're a victim and it's somebody else's fault, or it's a situation in life that created this, the idea and the thinking that led us in a direction we really didn't want to go. Now, I think when people begin to realize this and they take full responsibility for all things that happen in their lives, whether they're good or bad, it's funny how easy we can say we accept responsibility for the great things that are going on in our lives, the successes, but the failures somehow, well, if this hadn't happened or this person wasn't here, then things would be working out for me much, much better. But when you start to realize and you take responsibility, especially for those negative things that we're talking about here, you realize life starts getting easier, and then well, my thinking kind of led me into the direction where I met this particular person, or I was in this circumstance that it just didn't work out, or you begin to see, well, it's because of this that I've learned something that I needed to learn that takes me to the next step or the next level. How much do you agree with that and the experience that you've had with people over the years that you've worked with?
I agree with you, Daniel. But what I would like to make sure we mention here is you talk about taking full responsibility, and I think it's obviously very important for people to do that. At the same time, quite often people end up quite self-violent and start blaming themselves, which doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with responsibility. But they start being quite hard on themselves and pull themselves down. It's my fault. I did things wrong, and I failed at this. And that's not what we're talking about when it comes to empowerment. Empowerment and responsibility comes from the recognition that ultimately I can cultivate the choice as to how I relate to myself, other people, and life. That choice is everything. If you feel you have to go to work and you have no choice, then you're going to go to work with a begrudging resistance that's going to corrode your contentment and lead to this undercover resistance that is, well, downright stressful and often leads to health conditions. And so we need to move from I have to I choose to. Life is happening for me, not to me. And if we can start to make that shift into and towards empowerment and recognizing that I can have a choice. I'm choosing all day what I do. Even if I think I don't have a choice, I am choosing to do whatever I'm doing right now. If we can engage life from a place of choice, the self-violence often falls away, but the responsibility naturally increases.
Well, that certainly makes a lot of sense. Now, let's talk about beliefs, how they're formed, and how a lot of times they shape the direction we go when it comes to making decisions that we sometimes feel we're empowered in making, but we realize we're more on autopilot than we know.
Yeah, well, there's kind of two ways I've observed people form beliefs. The first one is through repetition. So that might be that certain events happen. They're not significantly emotional or anything, but you have certain patterns that your mind observes, and then it starts to form conclusions about this is how I am, this is how life works, and so on and so forth. So repetition is an important one. The other one, which is very powerful for the mind, helping the mind Detox can help with, is more when you've had some sort of root cause event. Now, what is a root cause event? A root cause event is any event that usually has the four components I'm about to share. The first component is it's an event in your life which was emotional. It was significantly emotional at the time. The second component is that it was unexpected. It just kind of came out of the blue. You know, you weren't expecting that person to talk to you that way, or to lose that person, or that job, or whatever. The third element, it's isolative. In that moment that event's happening, you usually feel like the world's been sucked away and you're kind of on your own at that moment in time. And the fourth element with every root cause event is the person hasn't got really a strategy to deal with whatever's happening at that moment. So when you combine these, emotional, unexpected, isolative, and no strategy, that's the sort of event in your life that is significant enough for the mind to immediately form some sort of belief or conclusion about yourself, other people in life. And in doing so, you can carry that belief, and it can impact your health, your wealth, your emotions, your happiness, your life success for decades. I've had many examples I can share if you want of how certain beliefs have impacted my life.
You know, that would be interesting to explore, because a lot of times people don't see the correlation where things, let's just say bad things happen in their life and they don't realize, well, did you ever take a look at your inside reality and how it manifests on the outside? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. Let me share a couple of examples. The first example I have is with the repeated events, where you kind of form conclusions over time. My mum, when I was growing up, would always say to me when I was having dinner, eat what you want, son, but watch out when you turn 30 because you're going to get fat. That's what she'd always say. You're going to gain weight when you turn 30. Well, guess what? When I turned 30, I didn't change my diet, but I suddenly started gaining weight. And so I had to recognize that my body was adapting and responding to that time-release belief that had been formed through repetition through my life. And obviously by healing that belief, I was able to naturally return to my normal slim weight without having to manage and manipulate my eating habits or whatever. So that's one example. Another habit with more of a significant emotional event was when I was a child. I used to have a lovely place up in Scotland. I don't know if you recognize the accent, but I'm from Scotland. And I used to have a little caravan in this caravan site in the heart of Scotland. It was beautiful. I'd play there. It was free and liberating. It was wonderful. But one time I was in the pub, the bar, on the caravan site, and I walked up to the bar just to order a Coke and a pack of crisps, potato chips, I think you call it. And before I know it, the guy standing at the bar had grabbed my ponytail. Don't get distracted by the story. I did have long hair at the time. And he grabbed me by the ponytail and pinned me to the bar. And it was very shocking. So there you go. You got emotional and you got unexpected. I also remembered looking around the bar, and everyone was just looking at me, but no one was coming to help, and I felt very isolated. He said, I know what you did. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, and he pinned me even harder. And every time I said, I don't know what you're talking about, he got more violent towards me, and I had no strategy to deal with it. I was completely in surprise and shock with no idea what to do to escape his grasp of me. Now, why am I sharing this story? Well, that was a significant emotional event for me. That was a root cause event. Now, I'm not saying they're all significant like that. They can be more subtle than that. But you see the four components, yes, Daniel? And that, from that moment on, my life never felt safe. The world just wasn't as safe as it was before then. It was a defining moment for me. And from then on, years later, I ended up with chronic anxiety, not knowing why. But it was because I developed that belief of not being safe, and my mind then starts filtering my reality to find more evidence to prove that belief right. And before I know it, I'm finding lots of evidence in my world to be things to be scared of, and I find myself with anxiety later in life, not knowing why. When I resolved that event once and for all using the Mind Detox method, the belief I'm not safe melted away along with the anxiety. So that's just a quick example of how changing your past event can help you to heal your present-day reality.
Now, when you decided to work on a lot of the ways that people can begin to change or even eliminate unhealthy beliefs, I noticed, as I was mentioning earlier in the program, a thing known as emotional freedom technique. Tell us why you decided to combine that process of inquiry with EFT, actually.
Thanks for asking. I mean, your listeners might have heard of EFT or tapping. It's where you tap on different meridian points in the body, and it helps to release stored traumas or emotions or stresses. Now, it's a very popular technique, but millions of people around the world aren't using it as effectively as they can, in my opinion, because they're basically being taught to tap on the first thing that comes to mind. They might say this emotion or this anger or this fear or this anxiety or whatever. They'll tap on the first thing that comes to mind. What Mind Detox does, it helps you to use the tapping EFT, emotional freedom technique. It helps you to use it in a much more targeted and effective way, because the method of Mind Detox goes in and helps you to find not only the root cause event, but the root cause reason as to why that event was a problem for you. It helps you to explore the unhealthy belief, the toxic belief that's negatively impacting you. And you can actually target and tap out the trauma, tap out the root cause event. It helps you to tap out the reason why it was a problem, the beliefs associated with it. So all I'm saying in as quickly as possible way for you is that it just helps you to be much more effective and targeted when using that technique. What I would say also, just as a side note, is sometimes, and it's very rare, but sometimes people do come across some quite intense emotion when they uncover their unresolved emotional events in their life. And so I have that technique in the book. It's very rare, but I have the technique in the book just in case. So you have a technique that you can use to quickly find release and relief from anything that you might find using the method. But like I say, it's rare to find anything that intense.
Now, the process of inquiry is where you kind of look into why you think the choices and things that you think. So you suggest that may not be enough. Why is that?
What did you say, sorry?
Well, I was saying that the idea of inquiry, when you're kind of looking into your beliefs and asking yourself questions of why did I make the choices that I make in that particular way, you suggest that may not be enough. What more should there be?
I think it's important to resolve the underlying reason as to why you have that belief in the first place, not just inquire as to what the beliefs you have might be. So it's important to understand, how did I create this belief about, it's hard to make money, or people I love leave me, or I'm not safe in the world, or I'm unloved, or not good enough, or whatever it might be. Whatever beliefs that you might recognize you have, if you are aware enough to see, your beliefs in your mind, then great. It's a great start to know what your beliefs are. But if there's ones that aren't serving you, people say, well, what do I do now? How do I change a belief? That's really hard. It's something that's kind of happened to me over time or due to this significant event. How do I resolve it? Well, the method itself takes you through 5 steps in order to discover the root cause of that belief, that toxic belief, and then resolve it once and for all. And when you resolve the event that's justifying the belief falls away, which is it's a marvelous thing to experience, because you literally start to see a different version of reality, because the beliefs we have right now are being proven correct time and time again by the mind. So if we believe that people love leave me, which is one of the ones beliefs I had, then for example, in my relationships, I would get into a relationship, we'd be having a great time, but the minute I realized I loved them or they loved me, something would change within me. I'd start being more clingy, jealous, serious, and the person they fell for had left the relationship, and that was what was left with this kind of serious, scared person behind. And so eventually the person would leave, and I'd be like, I knew it. I knew they would leave. I was right all along. But I created that. I made them leave because I changed, and I made it hard for them to want to stick around. And so if we are willing to go underneath the surface level symptoms of our belief system and our mindsets and attitudes to explore, why do I have this, and what's the cause of it, and how do I resolve it once and for all, it's amazing how quickly life can transform.
Now, generally when people decide they want someone to work with to try to redirection their lives, there's usually a big story behind why people do what they do, the choices they make.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, as you suggest in your book, Mind Detox, that isn't necessary. So you really kind of jump to the chase, don't you?
Yeah, we aim to get to the heart of the issue and not dwell on the past, and help that person know that, we all have the same potential when it comes to experiencing the peace that we want and the purpose for which we're born. And so I'm not really one to dwell on where we've come from. I'm more interested in where we're going and how we get there from right here and right now.
It's all so fascinating. I think our listeners are going to find this book to be invaluable when it comes to applying the practices that you share with here, and you've had a lot of great successes. And I'm curious, where is a website people can find out more about your work, how to get the book, things like that?
Well, thanks very much, Daniel. I've really enjoyed talking to you today. My website is www.sandynewbigging, NEWBIGGING.com, sandynewbigging.com. And over there you'll find my online membership site, information about my books. And if you are listening at the moment and you buy the book, you can actually enter a prize draw on my website for some great prizes, including one-to-one Mind Detox sessions with me, just to celebrate the book coming out. So I hope people will head over to the website, and I get to see them there.
Well, absolutely. Sandy, thank you for being on the Beyond 50 radio program today and sharing this invaluable information with our listeners.
You're awesome. I've really enjoyed your questions. Thanks very much.
You bet. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. You can also discover more at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We do encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter. Keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. And remember, live your day past halfway.